with that particular excerpt for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it gives me an opportunity to play a little bit, get some of the kinks out. Second of all, I wanted to try to make the procedure of an audition where you just have to come out and play a passage to the best of your ability. Try to simulate that. Try to give an example of how to compose yourself. Take your time, play through the passage to the best of your ability. Now, I've got some comments that I would like to make before I do any more excerptual playing. I spent the last couple weeks racking my brains trying to come up with humorous approach or any type of approach to present excerpts. It's a very unenviable position, attempting to play bass excerpts for bass players. But I really couldn't come up with any humorous or any super interesting ideas. But the main theme of my talk today is how to approach these excerpts. And I entitled the lecture, Excerpt Virtuosity. The meaning of this is that you should approach these excerpts as you would any soloistic endeavor, any chamber music, anything. You have to approach this with the attitude of a soloist rather than as, quote, a section player. And I'm not knocking a section player. We all are section players from time to time. To win an audition these days, you have to sparkle. You can't just take the attitude of, well, I'm a bass player and bass players are designed to accompany and I'll just take my back seat. You have to take the approach of a virtuosi. It's the only way to win an audition these days. Competition's getting too stiff. Now, I divided this virtuosity into 4 categories. Left hand virtuosity, right hand virtuosic preparation, and the nerves of a virtuoso. And I'd like to cover each one of those quickly. First of all, the virtuosic left hand and how to achieve it. One must develop impeccable intonation, first of all. You can't sit on out-of-tune notes. You can't. There's a little bit of allowance of a few out-of-tune notes, perhaps. But there's always the chance that the next person to come along is going to play it perfectly in tune. Second of all, you must have facility, strength, and speed. Thirdly, you must have a functional vibrato. And this doesn't mean one that you turn on and turn off. It means one with varying widths, one with varying speeds to do the phrasing. This is all very important. Now, I suggest that we accomplish this through daily practice of scales and arpeggios to develop the strength, intonation, and vibrato. This is very important. I have all my students do this before they touch any of the literature. You've got to have this functioning before, because if you try to develop your technique through your excerpts and solos, you'll always be limited by the pieces that you choose. You have to develop your technique independent of all this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the virtuosic right hand. You must have supreme sound production around the bass. Here, here. You get a good sound everywhere. You can't just get a good sound here, where perhaps a good percentage of the literature is. You have to get a good sound everywhere. And you must have a mastery of the different strokes, from legato to staccato to sautille. And again, I suggest that we must develop this independent of our excerpts. I personally spend half my technique time working on my right-hand strokes, my weaknesses. And it's really helped me in mastering the feeling of my bow and what it can do. Probably the most important stroke throughout the literature now is I don't have another name for it. I call it the long off stroke or the hammer stroke. And it's a form of off the string, but it's got a lot of length of the hair on the note. It's not a horizontal staccato. It's into the string. You have to have this. in my opinion, to win an audition these days, because it's the articulation that's needed on many of the passages, from Beethoven to Brahms to Mozart to everything. Everything's a variance of that particular stroke. I find that the German bow player, my German bow students have more problem with it for some reason. I don't know why. It's a matter of applying the bow to the string, or that this is in the way. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But you must be able to play this stroke with a lift and get some length on the string. This is absolutely important, in my opinion. Okay, that's enough on virtuosic right hand. Virtuosic preparation. Again, we're approaching this as if we would be preparing for any recital, anything where your name's on the line. If you have any hopes of winning at all, you really have to be serious about this. Okay, number one, you have to have good instruction, not only to teach you styles and be a bouncing board for your ideas, but it helps to have someone to monitor if you're ready to go to these particular auditions, because it's not a good idea to attend an audition and get blown out time and time again, and your teacher will help you to know. You need to have a good listening library. It's very important to hear the styles, hear the tempi. Now, they vary from orchestra to orchestra, so you can see, well, you don't have to take it at 144. You can take it at 132 or 128. Thirdly, you have to have a bass that's in good shape. Fresh strings, fresh rehair. I know these things seem oversimplified, but they're an absolute necessity. Finally, the practice that goes into it. And the number one key is the detail of these excerpts. Too many times I'm at these auditions and dynamics are ignored, stroke markings are ignored. The minute you do that, you're X'd. That's it. Forget it. Next. Because there'll be someone coming along that will pay attention to these details. It's very tedious work. But if you do the work, you're almost guaranteed to get a job. You have to have solid, consistent fingerings. And you'll hear this from me throughout all the literature that I've played today. The consistent fingerings. Most of this music is based on patterns. And once you've decided on your best approach to a particular pattern, then continue it as it changes keys. Try to keep the same pattern, not only left hand, but right hand as well, the string crossings. Try to keep them the same, because the more that you can keep them consistent, the more you can put it on automatic, which is an absolute necessity at these auditions. There's too many outside influences. There's too many problems that can go wrong to affect your playing. You want to be able to put it on automatic. I hope that makes sense. I'll keep repeating that throughout all of my literature. The consistent fingerings. You'll see how I choose to do something a certain way out of all the options, and then I'll do it the same way the rest of these. Okay? Comfortable bowing. So this is a point where my colleagues will probably disagree with me on certain aspects. I think it's important for one to have one's own music at these auditions, and to have the bowings that you're used to doing, unless absolutely specified by the audition committee that you use that particular orchestra's bowings. Now, this is within reason. You can't take the slurs out of the beginning of Beethoven 5 third movement form. You have to be within reason, but at the same time, you can take certain variances, taking certain passages up bow or down bow to help facilitate your performance thereof. And I'll show you instances where I've taken that liberty. Now, I may not do that liberty within my section, but at the same time, when I'm going to an audition, I want to sound the absolute best that I can. If that means beginning a passage uniquely up bow, I will take that right. It's my right. And until that audition committee asks me to play it the other direction, and I never have had that happen, I will continue to do that way and teach that way. Okay? Next point is over-preparation or over-saturation. To get to the point where you can perform at your top level, you have to really over-prepare. There's no way around it. You have to have played these passages so many times you can do them in your sleep. Because once you're under pressure, your right arm freezes. Your left hand can't find a D natural. You have to know these things so well, and that includes the notes on your bass and the particular bowings that you're having to do. Once the pressure's on, that's when it'll pay off that you're over-prepared. Now, when you're sitting there and it's 2 weeks from the audition, and this is the 4,950th time you've played this passage, just bear with yourself. It'll pay off at the end. guaranteed. My final point on virtuosic practice, and that is to begin now with your preparation of the solo selections. This is becoming more and more imperative in today's audition scene. And a lot more stock is being taken in a person's ability to play a solo, whether it's for last chair or principal or any of the chairs. The most commonly asked for solos are in the classical realm, Van Hall, Dragonetti, or Dittersdorf. And they occasionally ask for Bach selection. And the commonly asked for one is a parade to the third suite, the third cello suite. And if I were you, I would begin now to prepare the first movement of one of these classical solos and prepare the parade of the third suite. And have it down, have it memorized, have it cold, so you can call on it any time. It's rare that they'll ask for something besides that. And if you have played something for years and years, that's the way to go into it with an audition. Okay. Finally, I'd like to cover the virtuosic nerves or performing publicly. This is where a lot of people underestimate the part of preparing for an audition that has to be taken into consideration. Some people just naturally play better under fire. I'm not particularly one of those. I have to prepare not only the fingerings and the bowings and studying the style, but I have to prepare myself with my diet and with my rest. And before going out to perform publicly, I also have to prepare my body because my adrenaline's going crazy. And it's not something that I can just absolutely turn off, so I have to practice it. And that means performing as much as possible publicly and having my own exercises of relaxation. One being a deep breathing exercise, another one being positive visualization. Seeing myself happy with my performance. And this tends to slow down my adrenaline output as well. This is very important though, because you can prepare for months and months, years, and go out and blow it in 5 minutes just because you haven't prepared yourself or your nerves. I would advise playing for friends, playing for as many teachers as possible, play for other musicians, play for your family, play in church, play at public schools, play every opportunity you can leading up to an audition. Make it common to go out and play. Because if you wait until that last moment just to go out and play, it's going to be a train wreck, almost guaranteed. This brings to mind my final point, and that's the use of Inderol or beta blockers. I personally don't use them, and I don't advocate the use of them, although I don't condemn those that do. I would advise highly that you attempt to do this without the drug. I think that any time you have to use something outside of yourself or become dependent on that to perform to your optimum, I think you're asking for trouble. If absolutely you cannot perform publicly or make an audition without it, I highly advise you see your doctor and don't just take them from a friend. That's the real dangerous thing to do because it is hard medicine and you can affect yourself very seriously. But be very careful about that and realize that there are some musicians that can't go on stage without it, and that's a terrible thing. I mean, they should get out of the business as far as I'm concerned if they can't control themselves. But if you come to rely on that on a daily basis, then you're going to, no doubt, shorten your career, and then eventually it will affect your musicianship. So just be careful when you're messing around with that. It's not absolutely necessary, and if you train yourself, you don't need it. But if you do, see your doctor. That's my only advice. Okay, let's get on to the performance of these passages. I saw the list that I had talked about with Jeff a month ago, and I just about freaked out that I hadn't mentioned all those things. But I still intend to play most of them. I would like to begin with the most articulate or short in length passages. Those would be, we begin with Mozart and Haydn. If you brought your books. We'll start with Mozart 35. Each passage, I'm going to make a few comments, a few key details for you to watch that I think are important. And I would like you to, on an extra sheet of paper or whatever, write down any questions that you might have. And at the end of the period of time, I'll be around to answer any questions. Hopefully we don't run over. Hopefully we'll have time for everybody. Okay, Mozart. First, I've included 4 Mozart symphonies, 30, 35, 39, 40, 41. Ones that are almost always, these are the ones that are asked on auditions. The way to approach Mozart is in a lighter sense. All the dynamics should be a slight bit under what you would normally play. If it's a forte, think a mezzo forte. In Haydn, you'll see some fortissimos. That doesn't mean crash. Be very careful. Be sensitive when you're playing your Mozart. Be careful not to rush. Most of the things are very articulate, but you have to hold the tempo. Another point about Mozart is the evenness of your up and down stroke. This is so important. So often we have passages like that. If you don't have an even stroke from down to up, it sounds very strange. A lot of people get more accent on down below, whatever. You need to work to develop. You should be able to start it up bow and it sound the same. It should sound the same. It's very important. With string crossings as well. You'll see a lot of opportunities to do that throughout the passages. Okay, my first passage is on the first page of Mozart 35. It begins, let's see, I believe it's the 14th measure. Now this says forte, so I'm thinking of a good solid mezzo forte. Cover every passage in every symphony here. I'm trying to catch one of the like passages in each one of the movements that I would consider to be likely candidates for auditions. So that's it for the first movement. There is, the only other comment about that movement, it's got the passage. Be careful on the slurred 16ths that you make them articulate as well. You can't go. You don't want to grind that in. It wants to have a light quality, a lilt. It's got to dance. Okay, we move to the fourth movement, the monster passage. This one and Mozart, I believe it's 40. These ones scare bass players to death. I'll do the opening. Comments that I have about this. Keep a consistent fingering. You'll hear that time and time again. There's the choices of the extended fingering. There's the choice of pivot. And there's the choice of doing it up the string. Those three. There's probably others that I haven't thought about. But don't do it one way in one scale, and then when it goes to A, do it another way. Keep it consistent so you can put it on automatic. I also think it should be slightly off the string. I don't think it sounds good when it's ground in. That to me does not sound good. I prefer. Also the beginning, the opening. A lot of people attempt to do with the harmonic. That's an idea as well. Just keep it light, whatever you do. Give it that lilt. Another point, always collect yourself before you play a new passage. Don't feel rushed into... I mean, if you're on an audition, there's always a pointer. And they go, and you just prepare yourself. Well, just because he pointed, that doesn't mean start. It means prepare yourself. Take a quick look at the passage. Collect yourself. Don't start too early. Mozart 39. I begin with probably the most common, I've seen this on more auditions than all. The opening scales, the following theme, and the passage at the bottom of the first page. Some points. Pay close attention to the dynamics. Some of the scales are forte, some are piano. Hold the tempo, don't rush. Another point, these in the opening, right after scales, be very careful that you articulate these notes. I hear out at the tip all the time. And then they'll articulate the one at the frog and do it long at the tip. This is wrong. Articulate the same way. Doesn't matter where you are in your bow, do it the same way. Keep things consistent. The person shouldn't be able to tell where you are in your bow. Okay, that's on the scales. Let's see. Anything else? Don't rush. Okay, dynamics. All right, here's the scale passage. Here's one of the instances in the literature where you have an opportunity to phrase somewhat. Build to the middle of these of the little phrases here. I would advise highly against playing, in my Zimmerman book it says to play open D. I don't think that's a good idea. It needs vibrato. I will go ahead and continue on playing this passage on through letter C. Take note of the evenness of the eighth notes, hopefully. Evenness at B with the string crossings. Don't rush. Vibrate to the best of your ability. Then notice that, I don't know if you all have the books or what it is, at the bottom of the page, second line from the bottom, before the passage, I begin this with an up bow stroke, so that I can come into these. It's the way I like to do it. I get the cleanest off on the first eighth note. I think it's much easier than... I think it's very important to have the articulation there. Now, one other thing, the biggest commonplace fault I see in this is that a lot of people don't make these quarter notes even. They're two quarter notes. Whatever you do, same direction, or change bows. But I always hear the second one longer or whatever. Keep it consistent. Okay, here's the theme on through letter C. Because everything else is a variation of up-it-up-it-up-it-up. Now I move to letter L. Here the problem is string crossings and keeping it even. Again, you want things to sound just like this. Whether it's... Everything needs to be same length, same dynamic. And that goes back to the technical working of the virtuosic right hand. You can't just expect your right hand to be able to do it. The right hand is the most ignored thing in the bass literature. Everybody gets their fingering down and goes, what's the matter with you? It just doesn't work that way. You've got to take the left hand out of it. Go get the Fred Zimmerman book, the Contemporary Concepts. Just the concept itself works anywhere. Do that to all of your passages. That the right hand's a problem. Another thing, lots of times the right hand is a problem and you can't even tell that it's the right hand because the left hand keeps messing something up, intonation-wise or whatever. Lots of times the problem starts here. If you clean this up, it'll make the left hand much easier. And each hand has to be independently strong on its own because if one is, say you've got a great left hand and a poor right, then it's going to affect your left hand and vice versa. If you've got a good right hand but your left hand is weak, the tension will come across in your right hand. Okay, letter L. Don't rush. Includes the last phrase. Vibrate the notes that are long enough to vibrate. Sounds dead without it. I'll start 2 measures before L. Moving on. The second movement is it's not only a common passage for us, but in the other string groups as well. These little phrases that you have, all of them need to taper. They need to have a pleasant sound, nice vibrato, and even. They can't be like triplets, da, da, dee, da, 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 ba, dee, da, da. Smooth shifts, taper each phrase. And at letter A, a nice forte, full sounding. Not hard, not ugly. Okay, I will do the passage at the double bar, the opening double bar, and then I'll skip down to 6 measures before A and play until after A. important that you count out your rest as that audition committee sitting there. We do very often. You say, this guy has some time. They just play whatever. Okay, we move to the last movement. This is one of those passages where I think the right hand presents the problem. But I would like to bring up the point of consistent fingering, meaning consistent shifting. Keep the bowing the same throughout. Which means in the middle of the passage where it goes, you need to go ahead and turn it around so you can continue to start each one of these with a down bow. Keep it consistent. The other thing about the fingering, unless it's you can utilize an open string, I personally shift after the first note each time. I keep it the same. That way I can put it on automatic. Da shift, da 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 da, da shift, da 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 da, every time. Just keep it that way. Okay? So here's the passage from the double bar through letter C. One other point. That's about tempos. It's important, it's very important that you play these passages correctly from the beginning. Don't make the mistake of wanting to play it as fast as old Fred over here that can really bomb through things and you're just determined to get there. The only way to get there is to play them correctly, slowly. Teach your muscles what they need to do at a speed that they can comprehend what it is that's required of them. If you overload them, forget it. You'll always play slop. You'll never play it correctly. And then if you don't have it up near tempo for audition time, well, that tells you something. It's time to wait till the next audition. I don't care if it's your lifelong dream to get in that particular orchestra. It's not worth risking or playing things poorly just to make an audition. But y'all are all young still, so go ahead and take your time in these passages. When you come to your lesson next week, say, sir, I couldn't get it worked up to tempo, but I have it at this tempo to what I think is correct. And I'm sure your teacher will like that very much. The important thing is that it's done correctly. Now, the tempos for auditions, you don't have to take the world's fastest tempo for these things. Take even a little bit under tempo and get by with it many times. And if the audition committee considers it that far under tempo that it's just not in the same ballpark, they will ask you to play it again faster. Plain and simple. Now this particular passage I wouldn't go in and go, that's way under, but I would consider doing it there and see if it gets by, if that's the fastest, cleanest I could do it. Okay, enough about tempos. Things don't go particularly right, let them alone. Go on to the next passage. The only thing you got going for you in hard passages is that the next guy has to do it too. You have to remember that. The next guy has to do it too. Some of my students get scared to death about the lick and Haydn lately. And I just say, well, everybody has to do it. If you have to do it, the next guy has to do it. So just do your best and move on. Take it as it comes. Okay. We move on to Mozart 40. Okay, we'll start with a theme before C. Points to make. The big problem is in this passage, Seems to be here. Again, keep your fingerings consistent, in my opinion, and that means the string crossings. So my right hand has to go, and my left goes, it shifts at the same place each time. That way I can put it on automatic. The other thing in the beginning, keep it as lyric as possible. Phrase, taper at the end. Keep it even all the way through. And then at letter C, you're supposed to play a couple bars and just keep it even. Okay. The passage before C. I would like to do before letter E. This is another one that I start up for the purpose of doing the string crossings, to facilitate the string crossings. And again, this is where I consider it my right because it's my audition. And if they want me to do it the other way, I'll do it the other way. It won't be as clean, but I'll do it. Another thing, the middle passage, the middle of this passage, make sure you taper each one of these things. Strong note is predominant. Don't go. That's one of the big pitfalls in Mozart, is putting the emphasis in the wrong place, the phrasing. That's why you study style. Listen to the records. Okay, passage from before E to letter E. I chose a passage out of the third movement of this one, so we can get the dance feel of the minuet. Very important. You have to almost put yourself in that period of time to understand. I'll just play it. This is from the double bar. Fourth movement. This is the other Mozart monster. How to do this particular passage. This is one that you practice for years, and it just gets better as you go on, hopefully. It's one of those tough ones. Passage in B flat and C minor. My particular fingering that I choose to do is C minor. Keep it consistent. Some people do it. That causes a string crossing problem, but maybe it works better for you. Some people do it all on one string. I would advise doing them both the same way, again, for the reason of consistency. These scales, I prefer them off the string a little bit. It's not, I'm not talking about that. I'm just giving the bow a little bit of light at the end of each note. Rather than, I just don't like a ground-in sound. And I think bass, to achieve the type of sound that the other string instruments achieve, they have to get this long off that I'm talking about. It's in everything we play, because it gives slow motion. The note rings on through, has a very bell-like tone, but it's articulated. And I think if you keep it on the string, it kind of grinds it in. Okay, now that's a point that's argued quite heavily, so just consider that might be. Okay, passage. Okay, before we leave this, I'd like to do the passage of the double bar because this is asked a lot for intonation, stroke and intonation. Very careful with your positioning, stroke length. Again, a little off the string for the 8 notes. Double bar. I didn't choose anything out of the first movement. There's a few licks, but most of it's later. I did choose something out of the second movement, the scales. Again, one of these delicate passages. Scales from C on. And also the theme. Be very careful that you do it in time. 1, 2, 3. And your forte is pleasant, not too loud. Certainly not comparable to a Beethoven forte or Brahms. Certainly not Strauss. Okay, let's see. This is in 6, by the way. Okay? This is just continual passage work from the beginning to the end. I chose one of the passages with a trill in it. Now that's a question about this. How many trills do you put in there? If you could put a lot, fine. If you have to just do 2, I would suggest that. Doesn't have to be a lot, just has to be a little ornament. Okay? And the other passage I chose was from after F to the double bar. Again, I go off the string for the 8 notes. Okay, here's letter A. After A, about 20 bars to letter B. The murder about passage work is it's got to be there right there. I mean, with a solo, you can tend to get into it as the movement goes on. Hopefully you set your programming so that you begin with something that allows you to get the kinks out and get into your instrument with your concentration going. But this is just flat out, play the lick. That's the hard part about audition. Okay, after F. Notice the articulation of the half notes. They're all dotted. They're all the same length. It doesn't matter what direction. This is a lot the same. A few different dynamics. The same type of stroke. Articulate, light, with a lilt. The biggest problem here seems to be the string crossings. The first movement I'm speaking of. One other thing, after letter A, the passage needs to be separate on this. That slur marking that's in the Zimmerman book is incorrect. In almost all instances. I've never seen it done that way. This is one of the bowings where I don't believe that you have the liberty of taking it. Again, you must practice these without the left hand. Just to teach your right hand what to do. It's very important. Okay. I do from after the double bar until the next double bar. To the first, I guess it's about the 8th measure of the labor. Letter C in this movement seems to present even bigger problems with it. The fingering seems to offer more of a problem. It's the same bowing, separate the slur. I'll do this passage from C for about 16 bars. the 4 sets of 16th for arpeggios. Memorize the pairing. Get it so well ingrained that you can't mess it up. Once it comes, you tend to freeze up. Not time to think in an audition. Okay, I'll do the last 18 measures or so. Okay, that's it for Mozart and Haydn. No, wait, we start with the last movement of the Haydn 88. Okay, the big passage work at letter B. And I included from letter A so we can get some of the string crossings there. This is an instance where I would shift the same place every time, put it on automatic. In other words, the main motive is I always play 2 and shift, and you play the other 2, always. Except for one instance in the thumb position. Okay? So, let's see. Consistence. The main theme of all my stuff. Here we go from 5 before A until just before C. Next thing I move on to is Mahler, Mahler 2. I chose that next because it continues to be somewhat articulate, a lot of the passage work. Now in this symphony, just the first movement is asked for in auditions. Things to pay attention to, close attention to, especially in Mahler. The detail of the dynamic changes, because they're very radical. It goes from piano to fortissimo in 2-3 notes at times. Also, the same passage comes back, and the pickup will be an 8th note instead of a 16th. You have to be very careful to the note lengths as well. One other point about this. Pattern, the tough thing in this passage seems to be, left-hand wise, is this. That particular passage. Again, I preach consistency. I do 3 notes and shift. Whatever it is, whether it's 1-2-1 or 1-4. The reason being is that I can put it on automatic. My right hand does the same crossings 4 times in a row. My left hand plays 3 notes and shifts, and either does 1-4-1 or 1-2-1. It takes the thinking out of it. So here's the opening page, Mahler 2. Pay close attention to the dynamics. Okay, I included one other passage from this, and that's after number 9, between 9 and 11. And I chose this one because of the delicacy, and also to show you have to be very careful of going from the 16th, the duple feeling, to the triplet feeling. It has to be very exact. They ask for passages like this to check out a person's ability to keep the time correct. You need to be very solid with your time, by the way. You have to have an inner metronome that just doesn't stop. You can't rush, you can't drag. It just has to be right on. You can't play sharp, you can't play flat. It's got to be right on. Anyway, I play right through between first half and second half where it changes. Again, pay close attention to the detail. The slur to the dotted note, articulation, dynamics. Number 9 through 11. Okay, that's all I did for Mahler. Let's move on to Strauss. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Let's do Beethoven first. Beethoven 5. Two Beethoven symphonies I chose, Beethoven 5 and 9. Although some of the others are asked for. These are the most common. Absolute, you can count on having another trio and having to know the opening to the third movement of Beethoven 5 and having to know the Recitative and following that up with the beginning Ode to George for a few measures into it. Usually that's all it's asked of Beethoven 9, although occasionally they'll ask more than that. There's a lot of passage work in there. For the New York audition, since we were there, I had to learn the whole symphony. I mean, learn it well. That particular list was like, to get through the list took 4 hours. And that's a little much, I think. But probably helped my playing some, but Okay, but the opening passage I would like to begin with letter C in the second movement of the Beethoven 5. This is the scale passage. It's sometimes asked. The point being, I change bows every 8 notes for quite a while, rather than the particular bowings that they ask for, which is 12, to keep up the forte. The thing to do is to mask these bow changes as much as possible. We want it to be one long phrase. Just solid, consistent from beginning to end, pure sound. Good solid sound. Beethoven, the fortes are just, this is where they find out what kind of sound you have. This, recitative. Here, even arpeggios. I hear a lot of it needs to be exactly even. Tone color needs to stay relatively the same on the way up. You need to vibrate your notes that are able to vibrate. In my opinion, the hardest thing to do on bass is play softly and beautifully. To be able to play these notes. A lot of people can vibrate when they can dig in, but can they vibrate pleasantly when it's a soft sound? It's the hardest thing to do. The phrasing here, this is where the listening library comes in. Listen to different recordings of this. And finally, the tough point, the A flat there. Take your time going there. The note before, we get in trouble when we go, when we rush. The same thing goes for when you're beginning your passage one. Just take your time. It's your moment. So don't rush yourself. Okay. Pianissimo. I've been in a lot of auditions where they'll say, would you do that again, please, and observe the dynamics? What does that mean? Well, not to me. I mean, I was sitting in the audience. Do that again and observe the dynamics. That usually means play it softly. Leading the trio now. I usually start with the 4 measures before. And I've been to auditions where they ask the first 20 bars or so without repeat. And I've also been to auditions where they ask from the beginning of the trio to the end of the passage after B with repeats. Basically to see a person's stamina. See if they can hold up through this section. Get a good sounding on it. And then, after all the heavy work, come back and play it piano. So I'll do a compromise. I'll play it from beginning to end without the repeats. Here's the trio section. Try to get a good sound even on your piano notes. The tendency is to start skating the string. Still, you can get to the essence of the sound at piano. It's very important to do that as well. Okay, that's it for Beethoven 5. Let's go to Beethoven 9. I opened up with the Recitative, and I'm not going to play it again. A couple points. This is almost always on audition. It's one of the few things that you have a little liberty to take the time and do with as you please. I mean, if you listen to the recordings of it, there's all different manners of playing it. The things I would be careful of is keep the things consistent within a phrase. When you have two quarter notes, don't play one longer. Don't do things like that. Also, all the eighths, try to keep them the same. And then also get off the string again. Try to keep them the same. The last phrase. Keep these the same. Don't go. It's one of the biggest problems I hear. Keep the solidity to the end. And go ahead and learn the next page, because a lot of people ask for it. And I'll show you a little trick fingering. You probably already know it. Play it in one position with pivots and cleanly without all the open D stuff. Open D is insane. Okay, that's it for 9. Let's go on to Strauss.